Have you ever met someone who seems incredibly strong, calm, and independent, but somehow impossible to fully get close to? On the surface, they look emotionally mature. They don't need reassurance. They don't cling. They don't chase. But the moment real intimacy begins, they quietly pull back. Psychology has a name for this: emotional independence that isn't strength, but protection.
That hits deep. Because being emotionally independent is praised so much. People say it's the ultimate goal. But I've always felt like some people aren't independent because they're healed. They're independent because they learned not to need anyone.
Exactly. And that's the key distinction. Healthy independence comes from security. Trauma-based independence comes from fear. It's what happens when someone learns, usually early in life, that relying on others leads to disappointment, pain, or abandonment. So instead of learning how to attach safely, they learn how to detach efficiently.
So instead of expecting comfort, they teach themselves not to need it at all.
Yes, and the brain adapts fast. When your emotional needs aren't met consistently, your nervous system rewires itself to shut down longing. You stop reaching, you stop asking, you stop hoping. And over time, this feels like strength, but it's actually emotional numbness dressed as resilience.
That explains why some of the most independent people I know actually struggle the most when relationships become real.
Because true intimacy requires vulnerability. And vulnerability feels dangerous to someone whose nervous system learned that connection equals loss. So they stay in control by staying emotionally distant. They don't depend, they don't attach deeply, and they call it freedom. But it's really survival.
And society rewards it. We literally praise people for being low maintenance.
Exactly. Trauma-born independence often gets applause. People say, "You're so strong. You don't need anybody. You never get attached." But what they don't see is that the person didn't choose independence. They were forced into it emotionally.
That actually makes me sad. Because from the outside, it looks like self-control. But inside, it's loneliness on mute.
And here's the harsh truth. When someone is emotionally independent because of trauma, they often struggle with closeness the moment a relationship starts to feel safe. Not chaotic. Safe. Stability feels unfamiliar. Consistency feels boring. And emotional warmth feels overwhelming because their body was wired for emotional tension, not peace.
So they get suspicious when something finally feels calm.
Exactly. Their nervous system says, "This is too quiet, something must be wrong." So they disconnect. They withdraw. They self-sabotage, or they suddenly convince themselves they don't need the person anymore.
That explains the classic pattern. Intense connection, then sudden distance.
Yes, and the person on the other side is left confused, hurt, and blaming themselves. They think they were too much, too needy, too emotional, when in reality, they simply activated the other person's fear of being known.
So how do you tell the difference between healthy independence and trauma-based independence?
Healthy independence means you can be alone without feeling empty, and close without feeling trapped. Trauma-based independence feels like emotional control, but is actually emotional avoidance. You don't miss people deeply. You don't crave connection strongly. And when you do feel attached, it creates anxiety instead of comfort.
That makes so much sense. Some people feel calm alone. Others feel numb alone.
Exactly. Numbness is not peace. Numbness is protected pain. And here's where things get even deeper. Trauma-based independence often comes from emotionally unavailable caregivers, inconsistent affection, sudden abandonment, or having to emotionally grow up too early. When a child learns that needing others leads to disappointment, they stop needing.
So by the time they're adults, they don't even realize they built an emotional bunker.
Right, they just call it personality. I'm just not needy. I don't get attached. I like being alone. And some of that may be true, but underneath, there's often an unspoken rule their nervous system still follows. Don't rely on anyone too much.
And that must get exhausting, always staying guarded.
It does, because connection is a biological need, not a personality preference. Humans are wired for attachment. When someone suppresses that need, it doesn't disappear. It leaks out as burnout, loneliness, emotional shutdown, or even physical symptoms.
So what's the way out of that pattern?
The first step is awareness, realizing that your independence might not be strength, it might be protection. The second step is teaching your nervous system that closeness doesn't always end in loss. That takes time, safe relationships, and often uncomfortable vulnerability.
So the goal isn't to become dependent, it's to become safely connected.
Exactly. True emotional strength isn't never needing anyone. It's being able to need without fear, to trust without panic, to attach without losing yourself. That's what secure independence actually looks like.
This completely reframes what strong really means.
It does, because strength isn't emotional distance. Strength is emotional flexibility. And if this conversation resonated with you, you're not broken. You're adaptive. Your nervous system learned how to survive. Now you just get to teach it how to live.
That's powerful.
If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to The Curiosity Vault, where we explore the hidden psychological patterns shaping how you think, feel, and connect. Until next time, stay curious.